So we're icebreakers. My name is Brandon. I did 6 years in the Navy as a linguist and intelligence analyst. I've wanted to be a programmer since like before high school, so this is kind of a dream come true for me in a lot of ways.
My name is Luay. I did my bachelor degree in communications engineering 2 years ago, and I took some classes in C++, object-oriented programming, and I thought that it was fascinating. So I decided to dive into the programming world, and I moved here to Seattle so I can learn more about the iOS development. I love it so far, and I'm going to talk about our project today. It's Icebreakers. It's a interactive training primer. It helps individuals to interact with others in different situations, and then we'll provide them with some answers and feedback based on that scenario or situation they're in. And it's mostly our own vision of that situation and what's best for that specific scenario. So I'll pass it to Brandon for the functionality.
So the way that the website kind of works is ideally they'd start at the home page here and read through our little sort of sample scenario idea. The idea is to put the user kind of in the shoes of an individual that all right. Everybody hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So the idea of this first little paragraph is to put the user kind of in the shoes of an individual who is on the receiving end of an awkward interaction. And then, of course, it states kind of the goal of the page there. And you input your name here, or you can go straight to the training, and it will also ask for your name there. Either way, entering the name takes the person to the first scenario. So I'll put in my name. Our first scenario is kind of probably one lots of people are familiar with. It's a first day of a new class, and going to where you think might be where your class is supposed to be. There's only one person there, and you're not sure if you're in the right room. So how do you go about finding out if you're where you're supposed to be, kind of thing. The idea is to test, how would you approach an individual that you don't know. You can select any answer and get feedback, and it pops up down there. You can actually choose any of the answers after that and still get the feedback before moving on. So if you wanted to just kind of run through and see what each one is going to result in, that is totally fine. Additionally, you can just skip scenarios. So if you're not interested in doing this one about a company holiday party situation, you can go ahead and skip that. We have 6 in total and 4 answers and individual responses for each one. I wrote all of them. So we can go ahead and skip here to the last one. So this one's about a job interview. And the idea is to try to close out a conversation with somebody in a non-awkward way, which is something I personally struggle with, so that was very interesting to write. So my personal favorite here is to excuse yourself to the bathroom and never come back. So after the last scenario, oh dear. That appears to be something that Luay ran into last night, and I did not.
It's supposed to be a thank you note. Thank you for playing with us, and here's a link to our resources page. Because we gathered a lot of resources, we found that 6 of the best resources online and put them on one page. And
That page.
unfortunately, it didn't show up.
There's that page.
Oh.
So, I don't know what happened there. It worked actually literally before we came up here. But yeah. And then of course we have our About Us page. So that's kind of the functionality of the page. Moving on from that, one of the bigger challenges that we had as a group was figuring out the sort of order in which to put our JavaScript, because after each of us took individual functions and threw them all together, and then we debugged all that, we discovered that there were some issues with order of things happening. So we had to kind of combine everything into one big file and then separate it out into individual function. And that was a pretty major challenge for us. One thing that we probably did really well as a group was communicate. We spoke offline all the time about what we were doing, where we were at, if we had any problems, if we needed to bounce any ideas, all of that, just all the time. And that made things really easy for us, I think.
CSS was a little bit tricky, and we wish we had started picking our fonts and colors earlier, because we always have confusion where to put things and how to manage to make our page look at its best. So we would have started with that earlier, but it took us some time to put everything in place and make it as clear as possible. It's a fun project, and I love it.
I just reminded myself of one additional thing I wanted to mention about the functionality. When going through the training, it actually stores an index value in the local storage. So if you say go to, I'm at the job interview still. So if you go back into the training, it remembers what your index value was and takes you exactly to that scenario again. So if you only get a couple scenarios in and decide to leave and come back, it'll know exactly where you were. In theory, if it were working properly, and I don't know why it's not, that's awesome.
I saw it.
You'd be able to just resume where you were, and it resets when you get to the thank you note. It sets back to 0, so you can start over.
One stretch goal we wanted to add is to, when we refresh the page on the home page, is to be able to add a new user to play the game. For now, we just have welcome Brandon, and it will never change unless we do it, unless we do it off the offline, go clear the local storage and then start over. That's pretty much it. Do you have any questions?
What would you do differently? Do something differently.
We actually kind of talked about that a little bit. Probably one of the things we didn't plan out quite as well was our CSS portion. We definitely did some wireframing and talked about how everything would look, but prior to actually sitting down and saying, okay, we actually have to make this page look pretty now, we hadn't determined any colors or really any fonts, so that kind of put a hiccup in the process, but ultimately it wasn't that big of a deal. In the future, we would definitely plan that out from the start.
One funny mistake we did is that the index file, we had it inside a folder, and then we add that link to GH pages on GitHub. It didn't work. We got the README file on the page, and we had to move it out of the folder so we can have it on the main project page, and then it worked.
What did you learn about learning?
Well, I know we're not all geniuses, but we gotta make up this world a better one. It's just a start.
Any other questions?
Looking back over the last 4 weeks and everything that we've kind of put you all through, what was maybe the thing you were most excited about that you learned over the last 4 weeks? What was maybe the biggest difficulty understanding over the last 4 weeks?
My biggest difficulty was the identifier and the handler. I wasn't able to differentiate between the handler and the data inside the identifier, and then I had to do some extra reading to get that. Once I learned it, it happened to be a really cool feature. What about that?
Probably the biggest difficulty for me was figuring out where and why I would use an array for anything. It seemed, at least initially, that it would be easier to just throw everything into a variable and like have separate variables for everything, but rapidly that becomes very inconvenient. So that was kind of a challenge for me, just to wrap my head around, okay, where do I want to use arrays? And then to answer the second half of that question, probably my favorite thing to learn about was the local storage and how to manipulate that to store things semi-long term without using a database. So, another question?
It's okay, Brandon, that's coming.
All right. Oh, David.
Real quick, just was this project originally pitched by maybe one of your group members that talked about it as how to talk to an app?
Yes. It was originally proposed as a sort of app to teach people how to pick up women.
This was originally the cold calling app, right? Like originally, like how to cold call randoms. Yeah.
We changed it to be a more polite.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank